Hello friends, in this video we'll see how to calculate the flows in your network. Now we'll find out to calculate nodes in each network, how to find out the flows. To find out flows, the activity of small construction project and its sequence is given below. As we can see, we are given a table with activity, its preceding activity and its duration. Our first task will be to draw a network. After drawing network, we have to calculate its earliest starting time, earliest finish time, latest starting time, latest finish time. By calculating this, we can calculate the different floats. So the activities, preceding activity and duration is given. And what we have to do? We have to draw a network and find total project duration, show the critical path, and after that we have to calculate all types of float. So much of work we have to do in a single problem. So let's start with drawing of your network first. As we can see over here, A and B has no preceders. It means what? A and B are your starting activities. So it will diverge from your first node. So we'll start with solution. From this we have two activities, activity A and B. Now from A we have C and D. So from A we have C and D. So as we can see, from A we have two, C as well as D. So we should see that B and C should coincide at a single node because they will form E. So keep in mind that B and C should coincide at a single node. From A we have C as well as we have the D. So by keeping in mind that we have to draw next activity also, I already joined B and C at a single node. So we'll get B and C and we can draw now E. So while drawing E, we should keep in mind that E should coincide with D at a single node to draw F. So from B and C, we can draw E, and E and D should coincide at a single node. So from this, we can draw E, and E and D should coincide at a single node and they will form a next activity, that is F. So as we can see, we have in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 activities. So A, B is starting. From A we have C and D. From B and C we have E. From B and C we have E. And from D and E we have F. This is our network. Now what is the next step? The next step is to give the numbering for each node starting from left towards your right. So starting from left, that is above, it will be your node 1. From node 1, next you have to go towards your right. So node 2, 3, then we have 4 and 5. So in total we have only 5 nodes. So we have to keep the minimum nodes as possible. Now what is the next step? We have drawn the network. Now what is the next step? The next step, we have to calculate the project duration. Now to calculate the project duration, we have to calculate T of each node. So to find out TE, what we have to do? We have to make a boxes over each node. If you have seen the previous videos, you can easily do this, in which I have explained how to calculate T and TL at each point. So for you guys, I will always write again. While calculating T, you have to go from left to right and you have to take the maximum value. While going to calculate TL, you have to go from right to left and you have to calculate the minimum value. So let's start with your first node. T is your first column and TL is your second column. So T is 0 as we are starting with the first activity. So to calculate TE, what is the formula? T of your preceding activity plus the duration of activity. So in this network, we have to write down the duration of each activity. For A, it is 18. For B, it is 22. For C, 10. For D, 14. E, 6. And F is 12. Now the network is completed. Now we can calculate the T of each activity. So 0 plus 18 will give us what? It is 18. Then 0 plus 22, that is 22. But on third node, we can't directly write 22. So we'll write 22 and keep it aside because two activities are merging at node 3. So we have to calculate two numbers first. So 18 plus 10 will give us 28. And now we can write as 28 because we have to keep what? We have to keep the maximum value. Now 3 to 6. 28 plus 6. When you are going from node 3 to 4, 28 plus 6, that is 34. So we'll write down 34 and we'll have one more value because two activities are merging at 4. So 18 plus 14. 18 plus 14 will give us 32. So we have to keep what? We have to keep maximum value. So we have to keep 34. Now 34 plus 12 will give us what? Will give us 46. So our total project duration is what? It is 46. So our first task is to calculate the network. So we are done. Now we have to calculate total project duration. What is your 46? Now we have to draw a critical path. So first we write down over here the project duration. Project duration is 46 days. Now next task is to find out critical path. Now how will you calculate critical path? To calculate critical path, we require to calculate the TL of each node. So by finding the difference between T and TL, we can draw a critical path that we'll see in this problem. So starting with your 46 number, we have to go behind from right to left and we have to subtract the duration of each activity from your previous T. So 46 minus 12 will give us 34. Then we have to calculate now. We have to go toward 2 to 4. So from fourth node to the second node, 34 minus 14 will give us 20. While 34 minus 6 will give us what? Will give us 28. Now 28 will write aside because on here at node 3 we have to calculate the value 34 minus 6, that is your 28. Now from third node we are going back to the two activities. So 28 minus 10 will give me 18 and 34 minus 14 will give us 20. So as over here, as you can see on your node 2, we should have write the value which is the smallest one. The smaller value is what? The smaller value is 18. So it should be 18. Now moving on to the next, that is your first node. So we have two nodes 3 and 2. So 18 minus 18 will give us 0 and 20s minus 22 will give us 6. So it should be equal to 0 only because we keep the minimum value. So as you can see now, we have calculated T and TL of each node. Now we have to find out critical path. How will you find out critical path? While finding out critical path, we have to see that the difference between T and TL should be equal to 0 directly. So in this case, as we can see, if we go from 1 to 2, your T and TL is 0. Here also your T and TL is 0. From 2 to 3, then from 3 to 4, and last is 4 to 5. So that will be our critical path. As the value between T and TL is 0, there is no slack present over there. Now what is slack? The slack is what? When there is no excess time available for completion of that particular activity, that is known as your slack. Or we can also say that critical path has 0 float. So your critical path will be 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So this is our critical path. And if you talk about critical activity, then critical activity will be your activity A, C, E and F. These are our critical activities. So while doing the construction work, we have to see that these activities will not be hampered because of any reason. If these activities are delayed, then your critical path will get increased. The project duration will be increased. Okay, now we are done with 2 tasks. Now the third task is to calculate what? To calculate floats. So how will you calculate float now? To calculate float, I have made one table. In this table, we directly calculate float. So first is we have to write down activity. Then next is your duration of that particular activity. So we'll write down the activities representing nodes. So 1, 2, then 2, 3, activity 2, 4, activity 1, 3 is also there. So activity 1, 3, 2, 3, 2, 4, then E activity is 3, 4, and last is your 4 and 5. So duration of 1, 2 is, that is your activity A is 18, B is 22, for activity C 2, 3 is 10, for 2, 4 is 14, 3, 4 is 6 and 4, 5 it is 12. So we got the activities and its duration. Now what is the next task? Next task is to calculate the floats. To calculate the float, we required 4 columns, that is EST, then we required your EFT, LST and LFT. Now what are these? 3, and then we have remark also. Now what is this EST, EFT, LFT? I will tell you in detail. So EST is earliest starting time of that particular activity. EF is earliest finish time of the activity. LST is latest starting time of that activity, and LFT is latest finish time of the activity. Now we have to calculate this to get your floats. So we have to calculate 4 floats also, that is your total float, then we have free float, then we have the independent float and intermediate float. So we are finding out intermediate float, and last we will find out independent float. So the very first task is to find out what? Is to find out your EST. So how will you find out EST? That we'll see in this particular video. So to find out EST, so EST is nothing but the starting of your activity. So this point is EST for your A and B. So EST of first activity 1 and 2 network will be 0. EST for 1 and 3 will also be 0. For 2 and 4, the EST will be 18. For 2 and 3, EST will be 18. 3 and 4, 3 and 4, as we see, the EST will be 28, and for 4th and 5th, the EST will be 34. So EST is nothing but your TE, earlier starting time of that particular activity. So which we can take from your tail of your event. Then EFT. Now to calculate EFT, we have the simple formula. EFT can be calculated by adding EST with your duration. So add EST and duration, you will get what? You will get EFT. So duration plus these two columns, we have to add duration plus EST. So 18, 22 plus 0, 22, 10 plus 18 will be 28, 14 plus 18 will give us 32, 28 plus 6, 34, and 34 plus 12 will be 46. So we have calculated EST and EFT. Now let's move on to LST. How to calculate LST? To calculate LST, we require LFT. So let us first calculate the LFT. LFT is nothing but the TL at your head event. So these points, the second columns will give you what? TL. So TL is nothing but LFT. So for first and second, as we can see, for first and second we end the activity as second node. So TL of second node, that is 18. For first and 3, that is 28. For your second and third, for second and third again we have 28. From 2 to 4, as we can see at fourth node, TL is 34. From 3 to 4, at fourth node again, the TL is 34. And last is your fourth fifth. For fourth fifth, it will be 46. So LFT can be calculated by knowing the TL of your succeeding activity. Now we have to find out LST. Now what is the formula to find out LST? Again, it is a simple formula. We have to subtract LFT and duration. So LFT minus duration. So let's start. 18 minus 18, 0. 28 minus 22 will be 6. 28 minus 10 will be 18. 34 minus 14 will give us 20. Now 34 minus 6 will give us, now 28 minus 18 will give us 18. 34 minus 18 will give us 20. And 34 minus 6 will give us 28. Now last is 46 minus 12. 46 minus 12 will give us a value equal to 34. So we have calculated 4 timings, that is your EST, LFT, LST and LFT. Now in the remark column, we have to write down the critical activities. Why we are writing down it? We will know A is our critical activity, then C is your critical activity, E and F is also critical activities. So we have calculated critical activities. Now knowing the critical activities, we can know that the float of critical activity is directly 0. So there is no float present for your critical activity. So by writing this remark, we can directly write down the floats of critical activity as equal to 0. So this will help to solve the example early, and this will help you store your calculations and energy. Now let us calculate the total float. To calculate total float, we can use a simple formula. Total float is equal to LFT minus EFT for that particular activity, or LST minus EST. You can use either of two, anyone you can use. So let's LFT minus EFT. So LFT 18 minus 18, 0, as you can see for first. Now for your second activity, 28 minus 22 will give us 6. for your fourth activity, 34 minus 32 will give us 2. And you can check also 20 minus 18 is also 2. And here if you check 6 minus 0 is also 6. So we can use either of these formulas. Now by knowing this, let's find out your free float. Now how to find out free float? To find out free float, we can use a simple formula that I have come across. See, we have two activities, right? Two nodes. To find out free float, what we have to do? The first column of your succeeding activity minus the last column of your preceding activity. To calculate float, total float, we have used LFT minus LST. Now to calculate free float, what we can do? We can use two nodes of that particular activity. So the first column, that is T of your second node, minus the T of your first node minus duration will give us free float. For example, we'll see over here first and third. Now concentrate on first and third node only. So T is 28. 28 minus 0, that is 28, minus the duration, that is 22, will give free float equal to 6. Then for your 2 and 4, concentrate on second and fourth node. TE, that is this, 34. 34 minus 18. 34 minus 18, that is 20. And 20 minus 34 minus 18. So 34 minus 18 is equal to 16, and 16 minus duration, that is 14, will give us 2. So your free float is 2. If you can check for first and second, let's check for first and second. 18 minus 0, 18 minus 0, that is 18, minus 18 will give us 0. So already we have calculated for free floats. So that should not be any issue. Now let us calculate your next float, that is a independent float first. So how you calculate the independent float? So let's find out independent float. To find out independent float, the formula is free float. To find out this independent float, the formula is free float minus slack of tail event. So free float, where is your free float? That is in this column. So free float minus slack of tail event. Now concentrate on 1 and 3. 1 and 3. Tail event slack means what? 0 minus 0, that is 0. So here the slack present is 0. So 6, that is free float, minus 0 will give us answer equal to 6. Now concentrate on second and fourth. Second and fourth. Tail event. Tail event means what? The tail of your arrow. So second event. 18 minus 18, slack is slack present as 18 minus 18, that is 0 slack. So it will be what? It will be free float 2, that is free float, minus the slack, that is 0, will give us 2. Now next is interference float. How to find out interference float? While finding out interference float, the formula we have to use is same as free float. Just we have to use these two columns, that is TE of your head event and TL of your tail event. So for considered on first and third node, that is 28 minus 0, 28, and minus the duration will give answer equal to 6. Concentrate on second and fourth node. So T, that is 34. So 34 minus 18. 34 minus 18 will give us 16, and 16 minus your duration is 14. So answer is 2. So by using these formulas, we can calculate the floats. So we'll give you a quick summary. First of all, we have draw a network by using your giving activities and preceding activities. Then we have to use the duration to calculate the total project duration. After calculating total project duration, we made one table in which we write down your activities and duration, finding out EST, EFT, LST and LFT of each activity. Then we find out the critical path and critical activities. For critical activities, the floats are 0. The remaining activities, we have to calculate the floats. Total float, we have the direct formula LFT minus EFT or LST minus EST. And then we have to calculate free float. Free float we can calculate by using two nodes, tail node and head node. To find out intermediate float also, we require tail node and head node. And last is your independent float. An independent float can be calculated by using the simple formula, that is what? Free float minus slack of your tail event. Thank you.